Hello everybody and welcome to Untold Facts. My name is Arit, and with every episode of this show, we aim to put a spotlight on the experiences and perspectives of LGBT people in Nigeria. Now, what better way to show a perspective than to tell a story? Actually, I have an idea. A collection of stories. In this episode, we're going to be taking a look at the book called She Called Me Woman. It's a queer women's narrative published by Cassava Books in partnership with Tears. We're going to read some of the stories, we're going to explore some of the themes, and we're going to give you a very personal look at the lives and experiences of LGBT women in this country.
We've had about 105 different...
You may come out to your friends and to your family, but you may still not have come out to yourself.
You don't hold the world an explanation for being who you are.
LGBT rights are human rights. Now, somebody called me and said, they said I look gay. I said, what does gay look like?
Ability to be human, access to care, access to housing, education.
Yes. There is an agenda.
You can continue to stay at your home battle. You do not need any passport.
We're here today with Azina Mohammed. She's a holistic security trainer, and for this conversation, she's also one of the editors of She Called Me Woman. So let's start with applause. Congratulations, well done. You guys have done an amazing job.
Thank you very much. It's nice to hear somebody say that because we're very excited about the book. It's been a long time in the making. We started working on the book sometime in 2015, and it's so good to finally see it in copy and about to be in people's hands.
I can imagine. So how did this start, especially with Nigeria, its approach and relationship to same-sex and queer narratives? You now sit down and decide you want to write a book about queer women.
So it's really funny, right? The three of us had worked together on like different projects.
The three of us is you.
So the three of us is me, Rafiat Aliyu, and Chitra Nagarajan.
Okay.
We had worked together on like different projects, and we're part of Abuja Feminist Forum. So there was one copy of a book called Barid Mr. Jill, which was edited by an organization called Meme in Lebanon, and it was about the lives and realities of queer women. And that was around the time when Nigeria was about to pass the Same-Sex Marriage Prohibition Act, and everywhere you turned was a discussion of homosexuality, of queerness, of people, but one voice was missing, the voice of queer people themselves. We were constantly being spoken about, but our voices were not there, so we're both visible and invisible at the same time. And we thought, we should do a book that shows people in their own voices, with their truths and realities, and let's see who would be interested in it. So we reached out to the folks at Cassava Republic, and they were very excited, and they were like, I think it is something that they would want to do. Was there any fear or any anxiety about backlash, both from the people who would read it and even maybe from the government? To a little extent. There was a teeny tiny bit of there was a tiny concern, let's say, from all the people that we spoke to. So first of all, Nigeria is a country that is very proud of its homophobia. It's a club that everybody wants to belong to. And so we were cautious as to how people would see that, and if they would say it was something that was fostered or foisted upon them again. But we realized that the conversation has been going on one-sided for the longest time, that we had to do this, and in the end, it's just moving the conversation one step further. So what was the process of putting this together? You're talking about 3 years, which, that's a long time, and there must have been a lot happening. Yes, it was a lot. So first, the idea was great, right? We got together and we're like, yeah, let's do this. We've seen Queer Africa, we've seen Buried Mr. We've seen different other books. Let's get on with it. And then the folks at Cassava Republic were like, sure, cool. How are you going to meet these people? And how are you going to ensure that they're safe? And you in the process are also safe. So we had to reach out to organizations that were working in the grassroots. We had to reach out to Tears, to WARE, to ICAR, to tons of people. And it really was a community effort because people spoke to us and then they introduced us to their friends. And so we found ourselves traveling all over the country because we got stories from every zone in the country. And so there were some times that I was in Lagos and Chitra was in Maiduguri and Rafiat was in Ilorin or somewhere doing interviews with people. And so after we interviewed people, we came back and then we transcribed taped the interviews, and then we had to go back to those cities and sit down with these individuals and narrate it in a way that felt authentic to them. So then after doing that, we now got back to Cassava Republic and we're like, okay, good. Here's the first draft. And they were like, okay, now we have to edit it properly. And that's what took so long.
Wow.
Yeah.
And what was it like listening to these stories for you guys who are putting it together, and maybe for the people who, many of whom were just getting to tell their stories for the first time?
Yes, I think for me, one of the things that came out for me, it was very humbling, because as you said, for a lot of people, it was the first time that they were speaking about it.
Yes.
And for many people, they were also telling us things that they hadn't told anyone before. So there were times where it was very emotional. There were times I had to remind myself that I was there as a researcher, as an editor, and there was only so much I could do.
Yes.
But it was also full of laughter and wonderment. Like I heard people's stories that was so reassuring, so funny. Some stories were so full of drama. God have mercy, lesbian drama. But yeah, that did happen. But it was really, really great to see also, most fundamentally, that there was so many commonalities with just like what women go through in Nigeria. It wasn't just about queerness. Like people talked about what it means to be a woman growing up in Nigeria, and how it feels growing up different from, say, your brother. Your brother is allowed to go play outside. You're expected to stay in, to help cook, to do that. And sometimes the violence that women experience, not because of their sexuality, but because of their gender. The hardship that they found, maybe like looking for jobs or finishing education because, say, their parents lost their jobs or everything. So there was like a lot of common things that many other Nigerians have gone through, and I hope that when they read that, that's what they take away from it, that we're basically just all Nigerians dealing with the same issue.
I like what you said about the joy and the happiness, because I think many times when we take a look at LGBT stories and experiences and narratives, there's a lot of talk about the abuse, the human rights violations and so on, and these are valid experiences. But there's also sometimes a danger then that you start to see LGBT people as subjects, or, you know, as opposed to people who have
instead
the same
of people with agency and people who, like, many times I say, we need to not talk about people, we need to hand them the microphone so they can tell their stories.
True.
And that's exactly what we tried to do with She Called Me Woman. We're like, okay, this is your story, this is your narrative, how do you want it to play out? And people were very happy to speak about their experiences. And I mean, there is so much joy in the book and so much hope. And of course, as I said, there are those stories of abuses and of hardship. But there's also stories of people falling in love for the first time, with men, with women, with different people, people finding themselves in different spaces and different experiences. And it's I can't say enough about it.
I'm watching your response to it, and it's very obvious that even on a personal level, you feel touched, you know, by the book. And I can't wait till it's out.
Yes.
Now, do you have a favorite story? You know, they always say, okay, don't ask, because it's like asking me which child is my favorite. But I will still ask it.
To be honest, I've got a couple that I really, really love. One of the funniest that I really enjoyed was the one, I think it's titled, If You're Looking for a Lesbian, Go to Room 24. It was the most hilarious experience, I think, that I had sat down and listened to, because also I was the person who interviewed the person. She was in university, and apparently to her it was no big deal in the university she was in. She was in a relationship with another woman, and so it became publicly known, and someone went and put up, if you're looking for a lesbian, go to room 24, and stuck it in front of her room. But she was out when it happened, so her friends put it down. And when she came back, she was actually quite upset that they took it down. She's like, you know, that's really good advertisement for me. Can you put it back up? And so that for me, it was one of the funniest things that I had experienced, because when people talk about it, it's almost like homosexuality or same-sex relationship is something that is always hidden, but it isn't always. And it was also really... It was really good to hear the way she came out to her parents. She had gone through a really painful heartbreak, and she was so devastated that her mother was very worried what was going on. And she was just like, you know what, this person who always comes to the house, whom I'm always traveling to see, we really were in a relationship, we just broke up, and I'm just devastated. And her mom was just, she only cared that her daughter was in pain, that she was heartbroken, and she even offered to call her and talk to her. And I just found that so, so sweet, because there's support that
Yes.
many people find, sometimes within churches, sometimes with imams, like in the books. There are people who had support from religious figures, but it's not what we see outside.
Exactly,
So I'm
exactly.
really happy to put up this mirror for Nigerians to see the true technicolor and the full rainbow lives and realities that people lead.
That's also a very interesting point, because when we talk about LGBT stories, again, it's always like, oh no, the church or the mosque is totally against it, or families will always cast you out before they eventually grudgingly come to terms. But there are also stories of, you're my child, you know, whatever is happening to you, this experience you're sharing is what would have happened whether you were with a man or a woman.
That is true.
Or, you know, religious leaders who look at you as an individual who needs that presence and that support. As opposed to, so it's really great that that perspective is shared.
It is. I'm really, really happy to see that as much as there's the outpouring of opposition and abuse when it comes to queer people, many times people do find support with friends, with family, with siblings, with grandparents. And it's really, really good to see it, especially when maybe, say, a religious leader will stand on the pulpit and preach against something, but would make, as you said, time for the individual and say, how can we be there for you? How do we reconcile this with faith and wherever they come from? And it does continue to happen here in Nigeria.
I'm glad to hear that. Was there a story that was difficult to listen to?
There were a couple of stories, not just one. I read some stories in the book that completely broke my heart and shattered my belief in a lot of stuff. There were stories of abuse due to sexuality, but also sometimes due to gender. There were stories of people who have lived in places of war, places like Jos. And so one of the stories, which I can't remember the title right now, the narrator had grown up in Jos, and during the intercommunal conflict, they had killed her boyfriend. And her life went downhill because, you know, when you're in love in your teens, it's everything.
Yes.
And I think she was 17 when it happened. And seeing a dead body of somebody she loved completely changed the trajectory of her life. And so, yeah, that was a really, really hard story for me to read personally. Yeah.
Was there anything that changed a perspective you've always had? I mean, for me, just listening to the fact that there were religious leaders who were available to offer support is something I have not heard. I'm trying to think about here in Nigeria, and I don't think I have. So is there something that you realize, oh wow, this isn't what I thought, or this is different? In a good or in a bad way?
Yeah, so for me, having spent so much time in feminist circles, I had a certain thought in my head as to how I thought queer people behaved. So it was a little surprising to see that queer women also stick to some gender roles that I did not expect.
Yes.
There are some heteronormative roles that some queer women actually insist on. I sat down listening to people saying, oh, I'm the man in the family, and I'm like, what? And again, I had to remind myself that it was not my story, and I had to present this as authentically as it was, and also hearing stories of abuse in the relationship. So it's not a man beating a woman, it's one woman beating another. So there were stuff like that that really, really surprised me. And then additionally, something that really, really blew my mind was in the story of She Called Me Woman. So when she was talking about her experience as growing up and feeling female and not knowing even the word trans, part of the support and help that came to her was from strangers. Somebody reached out to her in university and gave her a magazine about somebody who had done a sex change. A woman in her faculty had called her and talked to her and told her to express herself in her full femininity, how she felt. And when her family had a problem with how she was presenting as female, they took her to a hospital. I think Yaba left here. And the doctors were where she found support. The doctors were like, this is not something we haven't seen before, and I don't think you can insist that somebody has to present another way. So hearing that there was support from school, from strangers on the street, from
the medical
society, that was really, really good to hear. And yeah.
Wow. Was there anything that you found was a common thread? Which is, how many stories are in the book in total?
So we ended up with 25 stories inside the book, and still the book looks like a dictionary, so it's a lot to read.
There are a lot of stories to tell.
Yes.
There are. But did you find anything, I mean, again, we have talked about common experiences, but from the queer perspective, was there anything that you found ran through, irrespective of where those stories were coming from?
So I think one of the things that ran through the book was people coming into themselves at before their 20s. I think that really stood out. People were able to discover themselves most times at early age, and also I think reconciling faith or spirituality with the feelings that they had. Like that Nigeria is a really, really religious society, and people strongly identify with how they were raised.
Yes.
So that ran through a lot of people. I think to a certain extent, like 50-50 people in the book say they're religious, but also others who don't say they're religious say they're spiritual. There are some who have broken, say, they've broken away from, say, religion, but growing up with religion was such a strong thing that had grown up, that had run through the thread of everyone, and everyone trying to reconcile that with their sexuality.
Do you think that there is a happy ending where religion is concerned in the LGBT community? Because this is many times, it's the biggest issue, you know, my religion, my faith. Do you have any hope of a happy ending?
I do. I see many countries where religion has found a place to not promote hate, because for me that's the biggest thing. It's one thing to say your religion says this, it's another to promote hate, and no religion promotes hate. I think we need to get to a stage where we say we're not going to be the promoters of how people are abused in the society. So I think for me that's the happy after, where religion stands up for everybody regardless of their gender identity or their sexual orientation, and says this is a place of love, this is a place of godliness and holiness, and not a place where we abuse people or we encourage attacks upon them. Yeah.
And have you seen, what kind of responses have you seen so far? I know you've done some publicity.
Yes,
I'm
a little nervous, to be honest. So we've done a lot of publicity, and everything that has come back has been positive, which is a little scary because we're prepared for mixed reactions, right? We know it's Nigeria, and people are very, very vocal on social media and online. Like, Nigerians will tell you how it is. So we expected that. But so far, like, we had a whole Twitter conversation, and there was the one voice that was in opposition of the book. So I'm like, I'm sorry, what is going on? The book has been featured on about 10 different websites, and there isn't a single negative comment, and that really, really scares me. I think I'm going to get to a point where I think, oh, it's all going to be well, and then when the book is released, it's going to be like an outpouring of hate, and we'll be like, what happened? But so far, the reaction from the people who have reviewed the book, the people who've had advanced copies, from the editors, from the websites, from the magazines and the newspapers that have read it, it's been positive.
That's fantastic, because maybe it's also time to have these conversations, personal, powerful narratives. Maybe it's time, maybe people are willing to start saying, I thought I knew, but I don't, and I'm willing to learn.
I really, really hope so, because it really is what this book hopes to do, to show people in their true color, where you see the individual true stories. And I mean, it's not the stories of all queer people in Nigeria, it's the stories of these queer people. I really hope that goes ahead to change minds and to change conversations.
So will there be, she called me woman a second time?
Okay, to be very honest, I have to say this. One of the things, like, this book really, really is a community effort. Like, people came and narrated their stories, introduced us to their friends. Also, when we traveled, people housed us in their houses, they fed us, and then when we were looking for a title for the book, like, it was the community members who came up with the name. When we were looking for a cover for the book, it was also the community members, because we were like, okay, this is a book about visibility. We need to have a queer Nigerian person on the cover of the book. And everybody was like, okay, we'll find that. And we worked, we had like different photo shoots, and then we had had like different people picking out different things, people having problems with this, with that, but we ended up with like a good title and a good cover. So I don't know if there will be a She Called Me Woman too, but we intend to continue to curate stories of queer women and put it where it's a living document and people can access it. And I think one of the places that we intend to put it on is whereloveisacrime.org, which is run by Tears. And I think that there are so many other stories that we need to hear, and we really need to keep passing the mic so that we hear as many diverse stories as possible.
And for those of us who want to start out by reading these stories and these narratives, where can we find
So She Called Me Woman is going to be released in a few days. It's on 26th of April. It's my brother's birthday. And that's super exciting because you can get it from the Cassava Republic shop in Abuja. You can get it from most bookstores, because that's where all Cassava Republic books are sold. But you can also get it online. It's sold on Amazon, it's sold on Okada Books, and you can get also e-copies. So it's available everywhere.
That's
super
great.
Exciting.
So congratulations.
Thank you very much.
I'm looking forward to having a conversation in a little while about what has happened, because I think the most revolutionary things often start from the simplest of beginnings. But then when you provide people an opportunity to tell their stories, it's a door that you really, once you open it, it can't be closed.
I really,
so congratulations
really hope so.
to all of you, to Chitra, to Rafiat, and to you.
Yes.
Any last words? Anything? Any statements for your fans?
No, I just really honestly hope that this book touches people as much as it touched us, the editors, and that they give it a chance. Even if it was something you thought you knew, just for a second, step away from that and read people telling you how it is. And I hope that that conversation continues to move forward.
Thank you so much, Azina, for your time, for the conversation. It was amazing.
It was nice to be able to be here and to talk about the book.
I'm glad. And I think for me, this is one of the most beautiful things about She Called Me Woman, the personal narratives, stories told from the perspectives of the people who are telling them. I also like the fact that there are themes here that are general to everyone. If you're Nigerian, you will relate to this. If you're female, you will relate to this. If you're human, you will relate to this. And I really hope that when you read She Called Me Woman, that you will see in places that you did not expect yourself in some of these stories. And I hope that it gives us all a more open, a more inclusive perspective on the stories and experiences of queer women in Nigeria. Make sure you follow this conversation on YouTube. Check out Untold Facts, and we'll be back with many, many more episodes. Thank you for watching. My name is Arit. Bye-bye.
We've had about 105 different...
You know, you may come out to your friends and to your family, but you may still not have come out to yourself.
You don't hold the world an explanation for being who you are.
LGBT rights are human rights. Now, somebody called me and said, they said I look gay. I said, what does gay look like?
Ability to be human, access to care, access to housing,
Education. There is an agenda.
You can continue to stay at your home battle. You do not need any passport.